In today's video, I wanted to continue with and finish up the Civil War questline featured in the Elder Scrolls V Skyrim. Last time, I delivered both Ulfric and Tullius' message to Jarl Balgruuf the Greater in Whiterun. No matter the Dragonborn's allegiance or influence, the Jarl always sides with the Imperials. This leads to the first mighty battle for the Civil War. The Stormcloaks try to capture the city while the Empire defends it. Once the battle for Whiterun is over, the Dragonborn is tasked with reclaiming the rest of Skyrim. Both sides want to capture the holds that they don't currently control. The player gets sent to different camps and forts throughout Skyrim and fights the enemy for territory. Said quests entailed fighting in all-out skirmishes, freeing prisoners, and intercepting enemy intel. Once all of the holds have been claimed by either side, the final push leads them to their rival's doorstep. If you have yet to watch the previous two parts, I highly encourage you to do so. This is where the story continues. After retaking the last hold for either side, the quest marker brings the Dragonborn back to their respective leader. For the Stormcloaks, the only thing left is to invade Hafengar, and for the Imperials, it's Eastmarch. Even though it feels like not much time has passed since the Dragonborn first got involved, that technically isn't true. At first I thought, wow, this questline flew by, and to be honest, it kind of did. It feels like I had just begun the storyline and now I'm already at the end. It was prolonged because I went back and forth between both perspectives. Just imagine if I had only done one. It might have been an hour and a half of gameplay, tops. However, the important thing to remember about Skyrim Civil War is that it stretches far beyond the questline. Every single NPC in the province is getting affected by it, and a lot of them are more than willing to share their opinions. From the smith in Whiterun to the mill worker outside Morthal, everyone has felt the effects of the war. Some just want the conflict to be done with, and others are die-hard followers for one of the two sides. It's how the game began, and it's how the player was introduced to the province of Skyrim. The Civil War played a decent role in the main story, and it's how we all learned of the Thalmor. Just because the playable part of the questline is coming to an end, that doesn't mean that the story is. In fact, I'd wager it's far from it.
It was important we reclaimed the Reach.
I'm glad we liberated the Rift.
Letting Ulfric control the flow of silver was a mistake.
It was dangerous having Imperials skulking about on the southern border of Eastmarch.
One I'm glad we finally corrected.
You have no time to glory in your accomplishments.
You've little time to glory in your accomplishments.
We're gathering for our final assault on Solitude. I need you there.
We're gathering our final assault on Windhelm.
Report to our camp in Hafengar.
Report to our camp in Eastmarch.
From here, the player is sent to travel to the final Imperial/Stormcloak camp within the final hold. Before the Dragonborn can help Tullius or Ulfric in the last stand, they first need to clear the remaining forts of the enemy. For the Stormcloaks, the fight gets brought over to Fort Hogstad. If this sounds familiar, that's because it was the player's trial grounds for the Empire. The Dragonborn needed to single-handedly wipe out the local bandits. Now, with the help of the Stormcloaks, the player embarks on one final annihilation mission. With a success at Hogstad, the rebels will have one foot in the Imperial's doorway. As for the Empire, their leading push brings the Dragonborn over to Fort Amol. This outpost is located just northwest of Darkwater Crossing. It's also an annihilation quest, and the player is working with the Imperials to defeat every last Stormcloak. While I wasn't really able to compare the previous quests for liberation/reunification of Skyrim, I think I can do so for these two. Technically, if you only played through the Stormcloak side, you wouldn't know that Fort Hogstad plays a role in the Imperial questline. However, now that I know that it does have some significance, I place it ahead of the Fort Amol battle. It almost feels like everything's coming to a full circle, or in this case, it's more like a Venn diagram. I had heard through Legate Ricca that Hogstad was going to be of great importance to the war effort, and after taking it away from the Imperials, it feels like the final nail in the coffin for the Empire. However, I didn't really get that for Fort Amol. To me, it just felt like another day in the Legion, sacking forts and killing rebels. There was no tie-in or full circle moment for the Legion's second last mission, so because of that, I'd put it underneath the Stormcloaks. Interestingly, according to the unofficial Elder Scrolls pages, these two forts were supposed to have more significance to them. Apparently, one of the original ideas for the main questline is that the player would have needed to pick a side in the Civil War. Only after doing so would they have been able to continue with the storyline, which would have been right around Dragon Rising. Again, according to the USP, the Imperials would have sent you off to Fort Hrogstad to investigate the dragons, while the Stormcloaks would have directed you to Fort Amol. If this is true, it might be why the liberation/reunification of Skyrim portion is so cookie cutter. There's barely any story, it's overly simple, and it feels like it lacks effort. There's a chance that the Civil War was supposed to weave in and out of the main questline, even more so than it already does. If this was something that was retconned, then maybe that could be why the second half of this story feels rather hollow. Maybe Bethesda had to scramble and put something together last minute, or maybe it was intentionally designed like that. Who knows? Personally though, I do prefer the direction that Bethesda took, and I like how they made these stories into two separate questlines. This way the player can take their time, develop their own opinions on each side, and enlist on their own agenda as opposed to the game's. In any case, once the final fort is fallen, Hrogstad or Amol, the Dragonborn can return to the Hold's camp and receive their next set of orders.
We're taking the city. Meet the brothers gathering for the attack. Fight well or die well. Talos be with you.
We're taking the city! Meet the soldiers gathering for the attack! Move it!
Here it is, the final push for Skyrim and the climax of the Elder Scrolls V's Civil War. Popping open the map, you'll notice that both Windhelm and Solitude are blacked out, similar to how Whiterun was during its big skirmish. This is because the attack is already underway for both sides of the war effort. Traveling to the closest locations for each city, you'll see smoke billowing in the distance, downed towers and fires ablaze. The debris and carnage have started to pile up. Lined up outside the city gates of Solitude are Ulfric Stormcloak and some rebels, while Windhelm has General Tullius and a group of legionnaires. At first glance, it doesn't look like there's nearly enough soldiers to take the city, but I guess the canon is that the rest of their forces are already inside the walls.
All right, it's time to deliver the final blow to the Stormcloak Rebellion.
This is it, men. It's time to make this city ours.
You have all fought bravely and sacrificed much to bring us to this point.
We come to this moment carried by the sacrifices and courage of our fellows, those who have fallen, those still bearing the shields to our right.
Ulfric thinks he can hide behind the walls of his castle. But we will fight our way in and drag him out through the rubble to face justice.
On this day, our enemy will know the fullness of our determination, the true depth of our anger, and the exalted righteousness of our cause.
Because this is the end for them. The Stormcloaks will fight like cornered rats. They will be fierce and crafty.
The gods are watching. The spirits of our ancestors are stirring. And men, under suns yet to dawn, will be transformed by what we do here today.
But they are no match for legionnaires. You are the best and the brightest warriors in Tamriel. Professional soldiers, fearless and devastating.
Fear neither pain nor darkness, for Sovngarde awaits those who die with weapons in their hands and courage in their hearts.
The Emperor will be paying close attention to what happens here today. Men who distinguish themselves will be well rewarded.
We now fight our way to Castle Dower, to cut the head off the Legion itself.
Ready now! Everyone with me!
And in that moment, the gods will look down and see Skyrim as she was meant to be, full of Nords who are mighty, powerful, and free!
For the Empire! For the Legion!
Ready now! Everyone, with me! For the sons and daughters of Skyrim!
Now begins the crawl through each major city. After either general finishes their speech, their soldiers begin to flood through the gates. Luckily, both missions are more like the Stormcloaks push through Whiterun as opposed to the Legions. The Dragonborn gets to fight alongside their respective faction and slices through their opponents. If you're a rebel, the goal is to make it to Castle Dower. If you're a legionnaire, the idea is that you get into the White Palace. Of course, given how close these two keeps are to the city's gates, it'd be too easy if the player was able to just waltz on up to them in a matter of seconds. So, Solitude's side gate is shut and Windhelm's narrow pathway is blocked by rubble. Because of that, the Dragonborn is forced to take the long way around, and it results in a small tour of the city. As it stands, there are no citizens in the streets, or at the very least, there aren't many. If you're fighting in Windhelm, you're solely taking on the Stormcloaks, and if you're duking it out in Solitude, you're only facing the Imperials. The city guard doesn't dare get involved, and I think it's because they know that this fight does not involve them. It is a bit strange though, considering that the Whiterun Guard played a big role in their city's battle. I was surprised to see that the Solitude Watch didn't really take part in any of this. However, maybe they were more so focused on ensuring the Jarl's safety. They probably understood that this was a match between the Empire and the rebels. If the battle had leaked over to the Blue Palace, then maybe we would have seen more of them, but otherwise they're dedicated to the protection of the Jarl and her people, not the Imperials. Now, both crawls were certainly entertaining. They more or less operated like one another. Fight through soldiers, smash in barricades, and advance through the city. For the Stormcloaks, it was neat to get to battle alongside Ulfric. He would occasionally use a Thuum, and he wielded a steel war axe of cowardice. I know that isn't anything groundbreaking, but it at least added a little bit of flavor and intensity to the battle. Sometimes I'd see a legionnaire go flying, and on occasion, a few soldiers would tuck tail and run. However, I actually think I preferred the crawl through Windhelm. The layout of the city made the battlefield more interesting than Solitude. Windhelm had a combination of open areas, winding pathways, leveled platforms, and tight corridors. At one point, the Stormcloaks were able to literally hold us down at a narrow passing. While I wouldn't say I was giving it my all, the Legion was stuck for a couple of minutes and the Imperials couldn't break through the rebel barricades. I found myself taking a step back and appreciating the battle even more. It felt like a fairer fight, almost as if the Stormcloaks had a home field advantage and they actually knew how to use it. However, while fighting against the Empire, I never quite got that same feeling marching through Solitude. We had crushed the Imperials at every turn, and it never really felt like the Legion stood a chance. In truth, I'd say 90% of that opinion probably comes down to me taking my time and savoring the moment the second time around, which would have been the attack on Windhelm. However, I do think there's a little objectivity in that final 10% that the streets of Windhelm made for a more engaging battleground than the streets of Solitude. In any case, once one side has advanced far enough into the city, the Dragonborn will finally be free to push on into the keep. You might have noticed that about 3/4 of the way into the crawl, either Tullius nor Ulfric were around for the fighting. This is because they've already made their way into Castle Dour / the White Palace. Both men have dreamed of this day, and it's finally here, the end to Skyrim's civil war. Due to how important these final confrontations are, I'm going to play them out one at a time, and I'll start with the Stormcloaks.
Already done.
Ulfric, stop.
Stop what? Taking Skyrim back from those who'd leave her to rot.
You're wrong, Ulfric. We need the Empire. Without it, Skyrim will assuredly fall to the Dominion.
You were there with us. You saw it. The day the Empire signed that damn treaty was the day the Empire died.
You're a damn fool.
Stand aside, woman. We've come for the General.
He has given up, but I have not.
Rika, go. You're free to leave.
I'm also free to stay and fight for what I believe in.
You're also free to die for it.
This is what you wanted? Shield brothers and sisters killing each other? Families torn apart? This is the Skyrim.
Damn it, woman, stand aside!
That's not the Skyrim I want to live in.
Rika, you don't have to do this.
You've left me no choice. Talos, preserve us.
The final showdown with Legate Rika and General Tullius is brief. There are no guards or soldiers nearby. It's only the two generals and their second in commands. Then, technically the Dragonborn is the one who tips the scales. Realistically, whichever side the player is fighting for was always bound to be the one destined for victory.
Guess it was
Enough! Enough.
This is it for you. Any last words before I send you to oblivion?
You realize this is exactly what they wanted.
what who wanted.
The Thalmor. They stirred up trouble here. Forced us to divert needed resources and throw away good soldiers, quelling this rebellion.
It's a little more than a rebellion, don't you think?
Ah. We aren't the bad guys, you know.
Maybe not, but you certainly aren't the good guys.
Perhaps you're right. But then what does that make you?
You just said it yourself.
It makes us right.
And if I surrender?
The Empire I remember never surrendered.
That empire is dead, and so are you.
So be it.
Just kill him and let's be done with it already.
Come, Galmar. Where's your sense of the dramatic moment?
By the gods. If it's a good ending to some damn story you're after, perhaps the Dragonborn should be the one to do it.
Good point. Well, Dragonborn, what do you say? Do you want the honor? Dragonborn, here. Use my sword to do it. This moment will be immortalized in song. Make it a good kill.
Using Ulfric's glass sword of leeching, the player is able to deliver the final strike. This is a blow that pushes the Empire out of the province and makes way for a new, independent Skyrim.
Good. It's done.
Well, I suppose some kind of speech is in order.
I'll go gather the men in the courtyard.
And Elisif?
Don't you worry about her. I've sent my best men to round her up.
Stormblade, I want you to have my sword, a token of my appreciation. Now then, the men will expect a speech. Will you stand by my side? I wish to honor you, Dragonborn and the truest of Stormcloaks. Very good. Come, the people await us.
With that, Legate Ricca and General Tullius are dead. The Empire's presence in Skyrim has been weakened beyond repair, and the Stormcloaks have reclaimed their homeland. Everything seems like sunshine and rainbows in the north, but if you've been paying attention, you'd know that that's likely not the case. Before listening to Ulfric's speech, let's return to the Legion's war effort and see what the final confrontation is like from the prevailing Imperials.
Secure the...
Already done, sir.
Ulfric Stormcloak, you are guilty of insurrection, murder of Imperial citizens, the assassination of King Torrig, and high treason against the Empire. It's over.
Not while I'm still breathing, it's not.
Step aside, Galmar. We're here to accept Ulfric's surrender.
I'll never surrender Skyrim into the hands of a corrupt and dying empire.
Skyrim doesn't belong to you, Ulfric.
No, but I belong to her.
Enough! You are traitors and will die traitors' deaths. Stand down and face public execution, or advance and face summary execution by my hands. It matters little to me. Either way, I'll be sending your heads back to Cyrodiil.
Well, what are we waiting for?
Again, the battle between the leaders breaks out, and it's the Dragonborn who decides everyone's fate. If you were curious, Ulfric and Tullius are placed at the same level as one another, being a slightly higher overall level to the Dragonborn. Then, Galmar and Ricca are placed at exactly the same level as the player. At the end of the day though, the writing's been on the wall ever since the Dragonborn picked a side.
Well, Ulfric, you can't escape from me this time. Any last requests before I send you to wherever you people go when you die?
Sovngarde, sir.
Right. Well?
Let the Dragonborn be the one to do it. It'll make for a better song.
Song or not, I just want it done. Here, use my sword to do it. I made sure to sharpen it for the occasion.
Interestingly, Tullius hands the player his glass sword of leeching, likely the same token awarded to members of the Legion. A swift blow to Ulfric and the rebellion is quelled. Skyrim is once again a nation belonging to the Empire.
Talos be with you.
What was that, Legate?
Nothing. Just saying goodbye.
Well, the men will be expecting some kind of speech, and we'll need to hand the city over to that free winter fellow.
Runwolf. Yes, I've sent men to protect him and bring him here. Windhelm will need a government quickly if we are to prevent more violence.
The Legion will be staying here for quite some time. I don't expect there to be any further violence. Oh, and Legate, it's been an honor to have you at my side. As a token of my appreciation, I want you to keep my sword. And now to deliver a speech.
With that, Galmar Stonefist and Ulfric Stormcloak have been sent to Sovngarde. The Legion is victorious, and word of their accomplishments is sure to be sent back to the Emperor and the Thalmor. Now, it's time to listen to both men's speeches and to close out their chapters for good.
And now, I present to you Ulfric Stormcloak, hero of the people, liberator, and High King of Skyrim.
The rebellion is over. Ulfric Stormcloak is dead.
I am indeed Ulfric Stormcloak, and at my side the man known as Stormblade, and the world knows as the Dragon Boy.
His head will be sent to Cyrodiil, where it will adorn a spike on the walls of the Imperial City.
And indeed, there are many that call us heroes. But it is all of you who are the true heroes.
Let this day be a final warning to all who would still call themselves Stormcloaks. We are turning the city over to Brunwolf Freewinter, an honorable and faithful man.
It was you who fought a dying empire, who sunk its claws into our land trying to drag us down with it. It was you who fought the Thalmor and their puppets who would have us deny our gods and our heritage.
Many of you will be staying in Windhelm to aid the Jarl in restoring order and stamping out any embers of rebellion that may still smolder here.
It was you who fought your kin who didn't understand our cause, who weren't willing to pay the price for our freedom.
In appreciation for your exemplary service, I am doubling your pay and compensation to the widows of your fallen comrades.
But more than that, it was you who fought for Skyrim, for our right to fight our own battles. To return to our glory and traditions, to determine our own future.
I am proud of all of you. All hail the Emperor! All hail his legionnaires!
And it is for these reasons that I cannot accept the mantle of High King. Not until the Moot declares that title should adorn my shoulders will I accept it.
And what about Jarl Elisif?
Yes, what about the Lady Elisif? Will she put aside her personal hatred for me and her misplaced love for the Emperor and his coin so that the suffering of our people will end? Will she acknowledge that it is we Nords who will determine Skyrim's future? Will she swear fealty to me, so all may know that we are at peace and a new day has dawned?
I do.
Then it is settled. The Jarl will continue to rule Solitude. I will garrison armies here to ward off Imperial attempts to reclaim the city. And in due time, the Moot will meet and settle the claim to High King once and for all. There is much to do, and I need every able-bodied man and woman committed to rebuilding Skyrim. A great darkness is growing, and soon we will be called to fight it, on these shores or abroad. The Aldmeri Dominion may have defeated the Empire, but it has not defeated Skyrim!
I hate giving speeches.
It wasn't so bad.
How'd I do?
Not so bad. Nice touch about the High King.
Thank you. I thought so too.
I hope we haven't just created a martyr.
There's bound to be resistance. There are many Stormcloak camps tucked away in the hills. They'll no doubt strike whenever and wherever they can.
It's a foregone conclusion, you know.
Oh, I know.
The Imperials are not going to leave us alone. They still have camps in the hills. They'll continue to strike out at us, whenever and wherever they can.
But without Ulfric to inflame their passions, they'll settle down and return to their homes eventually.
I pray you're right, Legate. In the meantime, we'll continue to root them out and put them to the sword.
I'm not afraid of the remnants of the Legion. In time, they'll all give up and go home. What I fear is that the Thalmor will see our victory here and turn greater attention to our shores. We must be prepared to face them.
Aye.
We couldn't have done this without you. The Empire glories in your accomplishments. Come, Rika. There's still much to be done.
And of course, we couldn't have done it without you. May the gods preserve you.
May the gods preserve us all.
Come, Galmar. We've still much work to do.
From here, the generals and their seconds go on their way, almost as if they haven't achieved what could very well be the biggest accomplishments of their lifetime. In one possibility, Windhelm, and all of Skyrim for that matter, now belongs to the Empire. The great nation to the north of Cyrodiil stands tall for the Mede dynasty. However, in another scenario, Solitude and the entire province are now independent from imperial influence. The Nords have their homeland back, and they can begin to rebuild and remodel it to their liking. With that, thus puts an end to the Civil War questline for both the Imperials and the Stormcloaks. Now, before talking about the future implications of either outcome, let's discuss a little bit about current-day Skyrim and how the Holds feel about a Stormcloak/Imperial victory. Really, I only went around to Whiterun, Solitude, and Windhelm. I didn't really bother to look at the other cities. However, I feel as though I got a pretty good idea of the general public's opinions. Starting in Whiterun, obviously the big change for a Stormcloak victory is that the guards have been replaced by rebel soldiers and Vignar Greymane has become Jarl. For many, life in Whiterun is seemingly the same. If you're a Greymane, it's arguably gotten a lot better. But if you're a Battleborn, an Empire diehard, you might be having a tougher time. A common theme we end up seeing with a Stormcloak victory is Nordic prejudice and idealism. Not all, but a lot of Nords tend to favor other Nords. So much so that they'd rather buy, trade, deal with, and even live next to their own race as opposed to the other human races. Don't even get me started on the Mer and Beastfolk. Adriana Avenici, a smith in Whiterun, says that the Stormcloaks don't want anything to do with her or her products. However, because her husband Ulfberth is a Nord, they're able to stay in business. This is a topic that becomes even more relevant when we move the conversation to Windhelm. Then finally, chatting with Vignar Greymane, I would say that he seems to have a decent head on his shoulders. First and foremost, he says that his top priority is the people of Whiterun. He doesn't appear to be letting his grudges on the Imperials/Battleborns get in the way. Ultimately, Whiterun is a different place with the Stormcloaks in charge. However, I'd say that not much has actually changed other than the colors of uniforms and a shift in business. Now, with an Imperial victory in Skyrim, there's literally nothing different to note in Whiterun. The guards still don their golden yellow uniforms, Balgruuf the Greater remains on the throne, and business is as usual in the Gem of Skyrim. I've already said it a few times, but remember, the Empire isn't looking to dominate and micromanage Skyrim. They want things to stay as they are, or rather once were. In their eyes, the Nords can keep their governments, customs, traditions, and rules so long as it all abides by the White Gold Concordat. Now, moving things along, let's head over to Solitude. With a rebel victory, this city arguably changes the most. The Imperials, the Penitus Oculatus, and the Solitude Guard have all been pushed out of Hafingar Hold. The Stormcloaks now wander the streets, and really, I don't think the locals mind all that much. Honestly, I spoke to as many citizens as I could in Solitude, and no one really made any comments regarding the new regime. The local smith, Baron, said that he's still as busy as ever, and some members of Elisif's court had a few varying opinions. Elisif herself had quite the pessimistic attitude, which I guess does make sense. She believes that she'll never be voted as High Queen of Skyrim, and that now her late husband Torug will never have justice. Elisif's steward, Falk Firebeard, has a slightly different outlook on everything. I wouldn't say that he leans more one way or the other, but he calls the sparing of Jarl Elisif a strategic move. Ulfric will be seen as compassionate and having essentially showed himself superior to his only other competition. There's no way the Moot won't cast him as High King. Quite the interesting take. As a Stormcloak, Castle Dour is now quite empty. There's a lone officer in Tullius's old war room, but for the most part, the passion and liveliness that it once had is all but a distant memory. Now, switching things over to an Imperial victory, of course nothing's really changed all that much in Solitude. The original city guard is still present, and the castle's grounds are crawling with legionnaires. Elisif is still the Jarl, and her claim to High Queen has only strengthened. If anything, it's almost as if the people of Solitude have hardly noticed any changes at all. No one really talks about Ulfric's death, and life goes on as it once did. Really, the biggest changes are to Castle Dour, as of course Tullius and Rika are alive in this timeline. As for what they have to say, well, I'm gonna wait just a moment on that one so I can match it with Ulfric and Galmar's dialogue in Windhelm. Speaking of which, it's now time to move on to the final city, Windhelm. As you probably could have guessed, with a Stormcloak victory, it's pretty much the reverse of Solitude. Not much has changed or been altered in Windhelm. The Stormcloaks are still the city's guards. The locals complain about life in the city, but they don't speak much on the Stormcloak victory or the sacking of the Empire. As for Ulfric and Galmar, they're alive in this timeline. Before we get to them, let's quickly talk about the Imperial victory and its effects on Windhelm. Chatting with the Nords of the city, they're quite saddened at the news of Ulfric's death. They believe him to be one of the greatest Nordic heroes. While the hearth of the rebellion has been removed, the embers of what he started still remain, although there's not much the supporters can do about it now. A few of the Nords want to leave Windhelm, with them believing there's not much left here. However, it's the non-Nords who hold the complete opposite sentiment. The Dark Elves of the Grey Quarter are practically jumping for joy at the news of Ulfric's death. Stormcloak and his Stormcloaks never treated the Dunmer fairly. They shoved them into Windhelm's ghettos, ignored their needs, and harassed them at every turn. With the Nordic regime gone and the diverse cosmopolitan that is the Empire in, the Dark Elves can slowly start to assimilate into society. In fact, the Dunmer have already begun to sing praises about the new Jarl, Brunwulf Freewinter. From the sounds of it, Freewinter's head seems to be in the right place as well. He chooses to be more mindful of the non-human races. He's working on creating a better life for the Dark Elves, and he's even looking into letting Argonians into the city, an unfair policy that was set in place by Ulfric Stormcloak. Should any citizen of Windhelm or Eastmarch for that matter run into trouble, regardless of their race, they'll be treated fairly and justly. However, Brunwulf says that there's still a lot of prejudice in the city, and that it's going to take some time to change everyone's opinions. His ideal version of Windhelm is likely one that won't be seen for generations to come. Alright, now let's take a look at what the leaders of both sides have to say. If you fought for the Imperials, your post-questline dialogue is with Legate Ricka and General Tullius. Whereas if you fought with the Stormcloaks, it's Galmar Stonefist and Ulfric Stormcloak.
There are those who still call themselves Stormcloaks, who continue to fight us and bring misery to the people, but they are few in number. The ordinary citizen will be happy to get back to life as normal, to have their families return home. And they should enjoy it while they can. I suspect all of Tamriel will again be called to arms in the not-too-distant future.
Ha! Ulfric's put me in charge of keeping an eye on the new Jarls. You know, make sure they're generally following orders.
The generals put me in charge of assisting the new governments. I may understand things here in Skyrim better than the general, but I'm a soldier at heart, not a politician. But I'll do my best.
Can't say I'm looking forward to that, but I will also be training men and women for their new armies. The Empire might send over a few legionnaires to make sure we're serious, and of course, we'll be taking the fight to the elves soon enough.
This is the land of my birth, the land that shaped me. I'm proud to have any part in making it strong again.
We'll need trained, disciplined, and creative warriors ready for all that. No. I trust you'll do more good out there in the world, wherever you damn well please to go.
The Legion's work is far from finished, but you are free to roam. I suspect you'll be of greater good to Skyrim out there, in the world.
You are a true son of Skyrim. You'll know what to do. To begin with, killing any legionnaire you find out in the wilderness. I've reports they've hidden military camps out there.
If, while you're out there, you stumble into any Stormcloak military camps, I expect you to destroy them. I've reports they are hiding in the hills.
There will be peace for a time, during which we must rebuild Skyrim into the land it once was. Strong, self-reliant, the center of mankind.
The fiercest of the remaining rebels will continue to harass us, but by and large the people here desire peace.
Because getting rid of the Empire was only half the problem. Soon the elves will again seek to rule the world. We must ready ourselves to fight them.
What I'm not so sure about is the peace we've made with the Thalmor. But we'll keep that between the two of us, all right?
For it will be Skyrim that shall lead Tamriel in those dark days, when the fate of the world is finally determined.
No. I suspect Skyrim to be my home for many years. I can't say I'll ever get used to the damn cold, or understand these Nords. But I've come to respect them. The harshness of Skyrim has a way of carving a man down to his true self.
No, not yet. We'll wait for the moot to name me High King. It'll be better for all that way. But that doesn't mean I won't start acting like it. There's much to do. The new Jarls need help building armies and enforcing their right to rule. The Empire may try to reclaim Skyrim, and I need everyone ready for that. Though the biggest threat, of course, is the elves.
Honestly, my biggest takeaways from all 4 conversations are that 1, there's really nothing more to do with regards to the Civil War. That's kind of it for the player. If you really wanted to clear out all of the Imperial and or Stormcloak camps, you absolutely could do that. However, there are no radiant missions, post-success banter, or really many benefits to your victory. I suppose that yes, the landscape of Skyrim has changed and your actions have resulted in the rise and fall of different NPCs and regimes, but the idea of the Civil War as a whole just sort of goes cold turkey here. While I want to say that it'd be nice to hear what's next for the Empire/Stormcloaks, all 4 of the leaders literally said what's on the horizon: another war with the Aldmeri Dominion. That leads me to takeaway number 2. Regardless of the victory, both sides believe that the next war is going to be with the Thalmor and that it's coming sooner than later. With an empirical victory, the idea is that the combined might of Skyrim and Cyrodiil could put up a great fight against any further Dominion invasions. Then with a Stormcloak victory, I guess the idea is that the Nords get strong enough and take the fight to the Elves. It sounds far-fetched, but technically they've done it before, and I'm sure they would be capable of doing it again. So, before I discuss the future of the Elder Scrolls and how it ties back to the Civil War, let's quickly talk about the canon ending for this questline. At the beginning of this series, I mentioned that a victory for either side would result in a very different version of Skyrim. With Ulfric's death, the rebellion is quelled and Skyrim is still a part of Tamriel's Third Empire. Trade between Skyrim and Cyrodiil can continue, more legionnaires can be brought into the province, and technically, the Dominion should be able to ease up in northern Tamriel. Part of the reason why the Thalmor even took up residence in Skyrim was because the Nords weren't obeying the terms of the White Gold Concordat. Even though, after the Civil War, select Nords may still worship Talos, the major, loudmouth faction that made it their sole purpose to oppose everything the Dominion stood for is out of the picture. Because of this, there's a chance that overall Thalmor and Dominion activity may die down in Skyrim. After all, remember how a few of the Legionnaires once said that it's the Empire who keeps the Dominion out of Skyrim? That is, without a doubt, 100% true. Skyrim is technically the Empire's jurisdiction. It's up to the Third Empire to keep them in line, or else the Dominion will be forced to step in, and that could cause problems for everyone. Also, I do believe Tullius when he said that this is what the Thalmor wanted: the Empire to crumble from the inside out. With all of the infighting between its provinces, the Empire only gets weakened while the Dominion rests and regrows its armies. Now, I do believe that with an empirical victory, the Empire is still going to allow Skyrim to mostly govern itself. They'll still get to elect their High Kings and Jarls, they'll still get to follow through with most of their Nordic customs and traditions. Really, the difference at the end of the day is that when the Empire calls on the North for aid, they have to answer. Switching things up, with Tullius' death, we see a very different Skyrim. We see a nation that's become very independent and culturally focused. The Stormcloaks and the Nords aim to rebuild Skyrim from the ground up. They intend to increase trade and relations amongst the holds of the province. Nordic values are brought to the forefront. The Jarls and the Stormcloaks have made it their goal to look after their own people. The idea is that when the day comes and Skyrim becomes strong enough, they'll take the fight to the Elves. They'll march on the Somerset Isles and lay waste to the Dominion, just like their ancestors did when they first reached the shores of Tamriel. Listen, before going any further, I just want to say that it isn't black and white. I don't think either side is 100% justified or correct in their actions. It's way more complicated than they're right and they're wrong. However, the Stormcloak ideology infuriates me to no end. They have zero regard for the bigger picture. Not once have they actually said how they're going to rebuild the greatest nation of humans ever, nor have they really thought about the Empire's role in all of this. There's no plan for the near or distant future. Half the country is still sympathetic to the Empire, and they're doing a terrible job at rallying people behind their cause. Naysayers get executed, non-Nords are looked down on, and non-humans are all but shunned. It just feels like Ulfric's plan for the unification of Skyrim is non-existent or poorly thought out. Sure, he's thought about retaliation from the Empire, but what about the Thalmor? What if the Dominion decides to step into Skyrim and take matters into their own hands? Or what if the Dominion takes advantage of a weakened Empire, takes control of Cyrodiil, and has easy access to Skyrim's borders? Honestly, it feels like the Stormcloaks have taken a page out of Dominic Toretto's playbook and thought that through the power of family they can accomplish anything. To me, their approach and logic makes very little sense, and it seems like they're fighting the symptom and not the cause. With that being said though, I wholeheartedly agree that the Emperor screwed them over with the White Gold Concordat. I think the Dominion steamrolled over Titus Mede's dynasty, and the treaty was put in place to save Cyrodiil's skin. The Empire threw Hammerfell and Skyrim under the bus, and the Nords and Redguards have every right to feel cheated. They came to the Empire's aid, saved Titus Mede, offered him shelter, and retook the capital, only to get repaid by having their most revered deity become null and void. I don't blame Ulfric Stormcloak for starting some kind of movement that fights back against an unfair ruling. He felt that his identity and beliefs were being taken away. He was doing what he thought was right and what he thought was in the Nords' best interest. However, how he went about it and what it led to was most definitely not the most ideal approach. If Ulfric had sought for a peaceful solution first, amicably splitting from the Empire, then maybe, just maybe, he could have had more of Skyrim rally behind his cause. If that didn't work, then he could have at least shown the Nords that the Empire doesn't have their best interests at heart. That way, if push came to shove and a civil war ended up breaking out, a unified Skyrim could easily toss out the Imperials. Honestly, I think the Stormcloak Rebellion has a valid argument for their cause, but I don't think that Ulfric Stormcloak is a fit leader. Every issue with the Thalmor and the Empire pretty much stems down to him. I think Jarl Balgruuf's opinion on Ulfric kind of rings true. He focuses on solving his problems through bloodshed rather than diplomacy. He's like a warhound. Unleash him and he'll get great results through fighting, but there's absolutely no reasoning with him. I think the rebels would have had a better shot at getting what they wanted, a unified and independent Skyrim, if Ulfric was never part of the picture. It's because of those reasons that ultimately I find myself siding with the Imperials. I wouldn't even call myself an Imperial fanboy or anything of the sorts. I think the Empire is on their way out, and at this point there's no return, where it's do or die for them. Really though, they are able to actually see the bigger picture. They know that this current world situation isn't permanent. Give the continent another decade or two, and the next Tamriel-wide war is bound to break out. They know that the Thalmor have nefarious intentions, and given the nearest opportunity, they'll strike at the Empire with full force. The Imperials believe that with the help of Skyrim, and hopefully some of the other provinces, they can crush the Third Aldmeri Dominion for good. The Empire knows that in order to win against the Thalmor, they need allies. In a Stormcloak-based Skyrim, there are no allies. The Nords are all but on their own, and how they'll fare against the Elves, well, I have to imagine not as well as a unified empire. Now, with all of that being said, you must be saying, well then, surely he picked the Imperial ending for his playthrough. Actually, I didn't. I decided that the Stormcloak campaign would be the one that this character joins. Why that is? Well, I believe that the Stormcloak victory in Skyrim is the canon ending for the Elder Scrolls V. To preface, never once has it actually been confirmed which side was supposed to win the war. Bethesda has never gone out and directly said the Stormcloaks won or the Empire won. Funnily enough though, in the Skyrim Tarot deck and guidebook, Ulfric Stormcloak is featured on the Strength card, and for his description, it's apparently mentioned that the Stormcloaks were victorious. However, author Tori Schaefer did come out and say that this was only one of the possibilities and that essentially the description was more for flavor than it was a fact. She says that as of this moment, the outcome of the Civil War is still canonically the player's choice. So, putting that to the side for now, why do I feel like a Stormcloak victory is still the canon answer here? Well, there are a few reasons for this. Firstly, it seems like Bethesda is setting up the Empire's downfall across all of Tamriel. It started with the Oblivion Crisis with the deaths of the Septums. Then it went on to the Great War where Alinor, Valenwood, and elsewhere removed the Empire from their provinces. Then it moved to the White Gold Concordat where Hammerfell seceded from the Empire. And lastly, it shuffled over to the Civil War where possibly the Imperials get kicked out of Skyrim. The Dominion sacked the capital, the Empire took it back with the help of their allies, and after signing a peace treaty, those same allies were essentially annexed and the Blades were done for. The longer the story goes on for, it seems as though the Empire is losing its allies and that it's becoming isolated. It's not the same beast that it once was in, say, Morrowind or even Oblivion. I believe that Bethesda has set up the Empire's slow but surefire downfall, and that the Civil War is the player's first-hand experience with that. The next reason I'd give is that if you looked at the questline as a whole, there seemed to be more detail from the Stormcloak perspective. To me, this was apparent during the tutorial, the battle for Whiterun, and the battle for Solitude. During the first few scenes of the game, it really does feel like Skyrim sets up the Stormcloaks as the good guys and the Imperials as the bad guys. The Empire is the Dragonborn's aggressor, while the Stormcloaks feel a little more like the protective brothers-in-arms. Furthermore, while getting carted through Helgen, we get introduced to the world through Ralof. His opinions on the Empire and the Thalmor are some of the very first ones that the player hears. He talks about how Imperial towers used to feel like a safe haven, but now they're nothing more than stones on the ground. Is this potential foreshadowing? Who knows? Moving along, you then have the battle for Whiterun. To me, this one was a night and day difference in terms of experience. Firstly, Galmar Stonefist's speech is much longer than Legate Rikka's. Rikka's is probably only about 2/3 the length of Galmar's, if that. I know this is a very minor thing, but it feeds off of something major that I'm going to be circling back to, which is effort. It just felt like there was a little more effort and thought that went into the Rebellion experience versus the Legion experience. I mention this now because if you compare the action sequences for the Stormcloaks and the Empire during the crawl through Whiterun, again, it's a night and day difference. The Stormcloaks are bashing through barricades, opening drawbridges, storming through the city, and dueling the Jarl. Meanwhile, the Legion is just kind of holding down the fort and killing soldiers. Don't get me wrong, I know that defending a city isn't nearly as cinematic as taking it, but again, it comes down to effort on Bethesda's part. If they really wanted to, they could have added a little more flair and sustenance to the Imperial side. Then lastly, there's the wrap-up of the quest itself. The Stormcloaks defeat the Jarl, he surrenders, Vignar Greymane comes in, the two go back and forth, you hear the dilemma that the Rebellion brings to Skyrim, and the Jarl gets upset with the player for choosing the Stormcloaks over the Empire. After all is said and done, the rebels are now watching over the city, and the government has been completely changed out. Meanwhile, the Legion ending has no big duel, and the Jarl just sort of gives the Imperials 2 thumbs up. Not a bad ending by any means, but again, to me, it comes down to effort and intention. The Stormcloak side received a lot more attention in the writing room on this one, and I believe it's for a reason. Then lastly, you have the battle for Solitude. Admittedly, the discrepancies for this one are a little less obvious. Really, where I noticed the biggest difference was during the final confrontation. While storming Castle Dour, Legate Rikka is quick to intercept Ulfric, and the two go back and forth for quite some time. Furthermore, when Tullius is downed, he has his whole "you don't get it" kind of moment. He talks about the Thalmor's intentions and how they're the masterminds behind everything. Then, once it's all said and done, Ulfric turns to the player and asks to mention you in his speech, which, by the way, is longer than General Tullius's. Also, while storming the White Palace, both Galmar and Ulfric hardly say anything, and Tullius doesn't interact with the Dragonborn nearly as much as Ulfric does. Trust me, I know most of these are minute and nothing burgers, but combined, I feel as though they hint at something bigger. To me, it comes down to the effort behind each interaction, and time again, it appears as though the Stormcloak storyline has received a little more attention than the Empire's. In my eyes, why put more focus on one storyline if you don't want that one to be presented as the canon event? Then finally, the last reason as to why I feel as though the Stormcloak victory is canon in Skyrim is because of the intention. I'm hoping this idea makes sense. Maybe some of you might understand, maybe some of you won't. But basically, why create this civil war and change the political landscape of Skyrim if it's not going to actually lead anywhere? Why throw Skyrim into chaos and bring on the idea of significant change if nothing's actually going to come of it? With a Stormcloak victory, you have all this new dialogue, you have the city watch being replaced by Stormcloak soldiers, Jarls are getting switched out, there were more fleshed out quests, the dialogue seemed more important and meaningful. The list goes on and on. Why make an empirical victory canon when nothing really changes, the quests have less detail, and the Empire is already in decline? I guess when it all comes down to it, to me, from a storytelling experience, it almost feels like the Civil War was all for nothing if the Empire comes out victorious. I don't see where the story would go if the Empire essentially just comes out even. What actually changes in Tamriel and what advances get made to the story? Meanwhile, a Stormcloak victory results in an independent province, a weakened empire, and the setup for an even more interesting Great War. At the end of the day, even I could admit that this isn't my strongest point, but I have to imagine that those who understand what I'm saying feel the same way with regards to the storyline. The intention, effort, and focus put into the storytelling makes it seem like the Stormcloaks were supposed to be the ones who came out on top. Honestly though, I wouldn't be surprised if we get an update saying that both sides settled their differences in a peaceful way and joined forces. I doubt that would actually happen, but at this point you never know. Alright, then the last thing I wanted to talk about for this series was the implications of the Civil War. How could this storyline affect the Elder Scrolls 6 and the future of the franchise? Well, I really don't see the next game skipping over the Fallout. I don't think there's any way Bethesda will have created the Great War, the tension with the Aldmeri Dominion, the decline of the Empire, or the Civil War without expanding on it in the next game. There's a chance that the Elder Scrolls 6's main storyline has nothing to do with the Dominion, but I sincerely doubt it. At worst, we'd hear about the ramifications of the Great War and the Civil War in passing, but I also don't think Bethesda would let such an event go to the wayside. Now, there are plenty of theories as to what the Elder Scrolls 6 could be about. I even have a video of it up on this channel, but I don't want to get into that for this video. Essentially, I just want to touch on what a Stormcloak victory could mean for the future of the continent and what an Empirical victory could mean. Obviously, I've already mentioned some possibilities and ideas. Just to tighten them up though, I think a Stormcloak victory declares the end of the Empire as we know it. I don't see the Third Empire lasting, I think the Mead Dynasty will fall, and I believe in some way, shape, or form, the Aldmeri Dominion will become the ruling regime. Or at least they'll try to. Skyrim could very well become the powerhouse that Ulfric promised it would be, but I don't think Skyrim alone could take on the Thalmor. I think Cyrodiil would ultimately fall, or at the very least, become weakened and obsolete. This is what could bring the series over to Hammerfell, as if you recall, it was both Skyrim and Hammerfell that got the short end of the stick when the White Gold Concordat was signed. As of the 4th era, year 201, the Redguards are still dealing with the Dominion as well as their own problems. Admittedly, I don't see the Empire or Stormcloaks playing a big role in Hammerfell's politics, at least not anymore. That's why at worst, I could see the Civil War getting a mention in the Elder Scrolls 6, as it just might not be relevant to the events at hand. If, for whatever reason, though the next installment takes place elsewhere or in a few different provinces, then maybe the war in the north will play a bigger role in the plot. If the story has to deal with the Dominion's further rise to power and the ultimate fall of the Empire, then I could see how the Stormcloak uprising would have played a huge role in all of this. Now, if it comes out that the Empire wins the Civil War, then we kind of have the opposite storyline. I believe an Imperial victory sort of jumpstarts the Empire's comeback. With at least one ally secured, they stand a fighting chance against the Dominion. If Great War number 2 breaks out, they'll be able to at least somewhat defend their lands, and maybe they could even take the fight to the Somerset Isles, Valenwood, or elsewhere. If the Empire strikes back, then maybe we could see them intervening in Hammerfell, and that could tie in with a possible Elder Scrolls 6 plotline. However, I think most people, including myself, don't really want to see this. Don't get me wrong, I don't like the Thalmor and I want to see them crushed, but I think the story becomes dull if yet again, the Empire perseveres, rebuilds, and continues to dominate the continent as they once did. To me, that's not a very interesting story. I'd rather some significant change happen in the next installment, something more akin to the Empire falling and the Dominion taking over. While it doesn't necessarily have to happen just like that, I don't think fans would want to see another Empirical comeback. I don't want to speak on the behalf of all of you, so I'll just speak for myself. I think it'd be much more interesting to see the franchise get flipped on its head. Throw us a curveball and plunge the rest of Tamriel into chaos. Let evil prevail, if only for a bit, and then throw some twists, turns, and action at us. I think fans are expecting something big for the Elder Scrolls 6, something that will completely alter the franchise. In order for that to happen, I truly believe that it makes more sense to have a Stormcloak victory for Skyrim Civil War than an Empirical one. Thank you everyone for coming along this journey with me. Let me know your thoughts and opinions down below regarding the questline, as well as my ideas and theories. At the end of the day, I think the one thing we can all agree on is this: there should have been more Thalmor casualties in the Civil War. Until next time, keep on adventuring.